Hi everyone, welcome to another Tim Wicklund do-it-yourself. So I have been brewing beer for 6 years or so, and I brew all grain beer, which utilizes actual barley. There's some rye right there on top that I just bought from my local homebrew store. There's one in Watervliet that just opened up this summer, and if you're thinking about getting into brewing, you can stop on down. He's got lots of kits to get you started. So I have actually never brewed a kit beer before at this level, a 5-gallon batch. I did some 1-gallon batches a long time ago to get started kits. And I've only brewed one time with extract. So extract doesn't use grains per se. It uses syrup or dried malt extract to provide sugar. So I grabbed the English Brown Ale kit because generally I just wanted to grab something simple just to see how easy it was to brew with a kit. So first things first, I would recommend, if you've never brewed before, to just do the recipe. Okay, don't try to add anything, make it crazy. Oh, I had amazing brown with coffee at Founders. Yeah, that's cool, but just brew a basic beer to start out, and then once you get the handle, then you start mess with it. So first, we're just going to look at the kit and see what's in it, and then we'll talk about how to actually brew. All right, so let's open this guy up. All right, so we have got the instructions. We've got some malt in here, crushed chocolate barley, that's dark malt, you see, and then the carapils is down here, that's for head retention. So that's what makes the beer dark. I don't know what that is. We've got a bunch of other propaganda. All right, wow, they gave me a grain bag for steeping the malt. Did not know that was going to be in there. They gave me some yeast, and this is actually an awesome yeast. This is Nottingham, which is an awesome dry yeast strain. It's good for dark beers, and actually it's pretty versatile. What's also really cool about this dry yeast is I could just leave this in my fridge for, well, all the way till 12/21, and it'd be fine. So Nottingham yeast. Well, they gave me caps, wasn't expecting that. Priming sugar to bottle. So actually I will, after I brew this, I'll bottle this one. Here's some Cara Munich, which is a kilned Munich malt, so it's a little darker. I think this is about, not quite as dark as dark malt. What we got here? Ooh, Willamette hops. Those are nice, simple hops. 2 ounces of Willamette. I've got some amber dried malt extract. Looks like I've got 2. And then this is where most of the sugar comes from. This is light liquid extract. So this is just a syrup, like molasses in there. So I'm going to take a look at the instructions, and then I'll make another video with how to get started. Pretty cool though. Didn't expect all that to be in the kit. And it looks like everything's out. All right. Peace. Okay, part 2. So basically you really only need 2 things to brew kit beers like this. You need a pot, and this one's way bigger than you need. This one is a 7-gallon pot that Kai and I use for making sauce and canning and stuff like that. So I don't brew with this pot ever. As you can tell, it doesn't have any valves or anything on it. The pots I use to brew beer are big, a 15-gallon pot, because I do full boils. So with a kit, you only need 2.5 gallons of water. So really, even if you had a 3-gallon pot, it would be a little tight with a boil, but you'd probably be okay. But I'd probably go with a 5-gallon pot. That's about the only real expensive thing you need to get into brewing at all. The other thing you need is a bucket or a carboy, and I'll talk about those later. So what I've done is I've taken just 2.5 gallons of water. I have an RO, reverse osmosis filter in my basement I collect water with, because my tap water in my city of Dowagiac has tons of fluoride and chlorine in it, and I don't trust Camden tablets or thyme to remove it all, because I've brewed some beers where I've treated the water to try to remove those, and it didn't work, and it tasted like butt. So either way, So what I've done is I've heated this water, this reverse osmosis water. Your water, if you have tap water that doesn't have high levels, you'd probably be all right. Well water is probably fine. If not, you can go to the grocery store and buy spring water, drinking water, and they have those filler upper machines that are usually open. Not nowadays, but usually they're open. So heat up the water to about 160, and then what I did is I took all those grains that were in those bags, I put it in this grain bag, and I'm basically steeping. So this is like a giant tea bag, okay? And so I got the water up to about 160-ish, and I'm just gonna let this sit for about 15-20 minutes and steep. So all we're doing right now is extracting all of the color and flavor out of the specialty malts that were in that bag. The malt in those bags doesn't provide any fermentable sugars really, so really this is just what makes the beer a brown. Most of the beers we drink, the only difference between them is a little bit of specialty malt. They all use base malt, and then basically the difference between a stout and an IPA is about maybe 1 pound of malt in a 5-gallon batch. So it's really not that much when you look at, 12 pounds of malt total, only 1 pound different, really. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but, So I'm gonna let this steep for about 15 minutes. And then when it's done, I'm gonna pull that bag out and toss it because we're done with it. And then what I'm gonna do is start my boil, and that's where I'll add the malt extract. The only real other expensive thing you really should have if you're brewing, you should have a good thermometer. I have a Thermapen. It cost me $100. 2 years ago, I use it 3 days a week. So, I mean, so far this has cost me 30 cents every day I've used it, and every day goes past, that number gets lower and lower. So it's been pretty useful. It's pretty indestructible, and it's super accurate. So as you can see, I can just dip it down right in there. Boom, tells me I'm at 158. So it's pretty fast readout. You can use a little, I think I have one of them over here in my cupboard. You can use, you could use one of these if you want, but they're just not as accurate. So, all right, stay tuned for part 3 where I start the boil. Also note the time, it is 9:30. I started these videos at 9, so this brew day is gonna be really short compared to my all grain days. You're not here, but that smells pretty good. All right, so now it's time to add the actual sugars. I've got the bag tied up off the side here so it can drip in there. I'm not going to squeeze it. The instructions said not to squeeze it, so I'm not going to. This stuff I'm actually pouring in early, and the reason is because it tends to, if you can see, it's really thick. It's like molasses. It tends to collect in one spot and scorch. I learned this from my friend Patrick, who brews only extract beers. He doesn't do kits necessarily. He makes his own recipes, but he uses a lot of these kind of cans when he's brewing. So I don't want to scorch it and have it taste like burnt. So I'm actually going to pour this in now before I start. But basically what I'm going to do is pour this stuff in. I'm going to empty those 2 bags in too. And I'm going to stir it up good and start boiling. Heat up to a boil. And that's where I'll add the hops and all that, which I'll talk about later. What's really nice about doing this kit versus how I normally brew, when I brew beer, I start out with 8 gallons of water and end up with 5.5 when I'm done. So I need to collect a lot of water and boil for a long time and evaporate water on purpose and, convert sugars and all that. These sugars are already converted. So basically, the only reason I'm going to boil for an hour is to make sure that my hops are perfectly utilized and all that. So it's actually a pretty easy way. In fact, if you look, it's still only 9:45, and I'm about to start my boil here, which typically on a brew day, after 45 minutes, my water is almost at temp, and I'm about to start mashing in. So this is going a lot faster. I don't have as much control over the beer or, the body of the beer and that kind of stuff because I'm using malt extract. But you know what? I'm sure it's going to be tasty. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a spoon and start scooping this out. Can't do that because I'm holding the phone. So when I come back, I will be starting the boil. Okay, so my boil started. It is kind of hard to see because of steam, but it is rolling pretty well. I'll get to a point where I can turn the heat down a little bit so it doesn't have to use up so much gas. But I am going to add my first dose of hops. These are what hop pellets smell like. They smell really good. These ones are a little bit, not really fruity. It says elderberry and incense and floral right there, but I can see floral, but there's a little bit of spice to them too. These hops are not super flavorful. They're more for kind of background flavors. So I actually like to put my hops in a sack so it keeps them from all the vegetation from going everywhere. And you dump it in there. And I'm gonna do what's called a whirlpool just to help the hops mix in a little bit. That's pretty dangerous to do, hold my phone, because my depth perception is not so good, and glad I didn't stick my hand in there. All right, and I'm gonna set a timer for a half an hour. And then in 1/2 an hour, I will add another bag of hops. And then I'll have a half hour more of boil, and then I'll be ready to go. So I am gonna add one extra thing to my boil that's not in the recipe. I like to use what's called a Werflock tablet, which has Irish moss and another chemical or something in it that I'm drawing a blank right now. There's probably someone watching this video yelling it right now, but it will help my beer be more clear. I like clear beer. So there you go. So now we're just boiling. This part's easy. I'm just gonna keep an eye on it and make sure it doesn't boil over. And other than that, we just wait. Peace. Okay, so my timer for my second hop addition is going off, so I'm gonna throw that in there. A little discussion on hops real quick. So hops are used for bittering and flavor. The earlier you put the hops in the boil, the more of the oils in the hops convert to bittering units. So if you put a lot of hops in the beginning of the boil, you get lots of bitter. And then the later the hops go in, the fewer of the oils convert, so you get more flavor. So this recipe had one addition in the beginning for all bittering and one in the middle, which would do a little bit of flavor, a little bit of bittering. So yeah, that's my life. In 15 minutes, I'm gonna add this Werflock tablet that keeps it clear. And then I'm gonna start chilling down. I'm gonna chill as fast as possible with ice. Usually I use a plate chiller or an immersion chiller, which uses cold water to chill it down super fast. But since it's only 2.5 gallons, I'm gonna try doing it just with ice in my sink. I'm also gonna add the rest of the water to it. That'll cool it down. And then I'll show you, talk a little bit about the vessels and the things that we use to transfer. So. Either way, we got about half hour left in the boil, and then we'll start chilling down and getting ready to ferment. So it's coming along pretty fast here. I've only been brewing for not even 2 hours yet, and I'm about probably an hour left to be done. So pretty easy day compared to all grain. Usually my brew day is about 5 or 6 hours. All right, peace. All right, so basically the last step of the actual brew is cooling down your wort. So there's my finished wort. You want to chill down below 170 as fast as possible because hops keep converting over to bittering. I'm doing this really simple. I just have my sink full of cold water. My tap water was about 50 degrees, and I just added all the ice packs I have and the ice from my fridge that it makes in the ice maker to cool down, which is nice because this is only about 2 gallons of water. So to get down to 170 shouldn't be too bad. Now, the most important thing about this whole process is, number one, you don't want any of that water in there. You don't want any of that water in there either. That tap water will make your beer taste like something that David Jones would make. But the main thing is you need everything to be sanitized. So like right now, This is a bucket of sanitized water I made with Star San. It's a product you can buy at any homebrew store. You just mix an ounce with 5 gallons, and it's like an acid sanitizer. It's food grade. So I'm going to stick my thermometer in that for a few seconds before I even check the temperature, because what I want to do is make sure as this gets below 170, I don't want to add any pathogens or anything on accident. So I'm checking my temp, which is hard for you to see. It's already down to about, kind of hard to tell exactly because it's kind of still swirling around there, but it looks like it's down to 165 already, which if that's the case, that was really fast. It's chilling real quickly, so that's pretty cool. When this gets down a little lower, I'm going to take it and put it in my carboy. So I'm using a glass carboy today. These are pretty expensive. They're like 40 bucks, but what's awesome about them is unless you break it, you can use it indefinitely. Glass is super clean. It leaches no flavors whatsoever into the beer. What a lot of people prefer to use is a brew bucket, which these are a lot cheaper. They're 15 bucks. But honestly, I feel like you get a certain amount of uses out of them and you want to stop using them. They're stained. It's hard to get the beer smell out of them. So like even after you clean it really well, it still smells like beer, like hop flavor. And also I worry about plastics leaching into the beer. So I do use buckets, but when I can, I try to use a carboy. So if you look, I've already got some sanitizer in there. What you haven't seen is every once in a while I pick that up and just swish it around, because you really need to watch for sanitation here. So if I took, for example, if I wanted to stir my wort up right now, I'm gonna take this spoon, and usually I even stick my hand in there too, just to make sure my hand's sanitized. I stick it in there for a few seconds to make sure everything is, all the bacteria and everything is gone, and then I will stir. Because you don't want anything growing in this beer besides the yeast that you pitched. Now it's impossible to get everything out, but what you want to do is have so much of the yeast you're fermenting with inside of it that if there are any wild yeast or bacteria in it, they don't have a chance to really take hold and make any flavors. The problem with wild yeast and bacteria is you just don't know what it's going to taste like. So that's why we worry about that. A lot of people use wild yeast to ferment. I've done ciders with wild yeast and they come out kind of funky, but they're drinkable. Had a discussion on Facebook with some friends today about sourdough starters, which is basically just cultivating wild Saccharomyces yeast and Lactobacillus bacteria from the air to make your bread. So yeah, so we're chilling down. When this gets a little lower, down in the closer to 100, I'm probably gonna rack it into my carboy, and then I'm gonna add, that's RO water that I made earlier. I'm gonna add water, so I have 5 gallons worth, and we're gonna check the gravity to see where we are. So one more video for today, and then I'll give video updates as it ferments, and then when I get to bottling, which will be a couple weeks from now at least. All right.